Welcome back, everyone. Pal Ponder on Weather here. We are in the middle of the biggest atmospheric river event of the year. Here is the overall setup. We've got this ridge of high pressure that is locked up over the upper Great Lakes, and we have some instability further south in and around the southeast, but it's this area of concern across the west coast. That's the ridge is keeping this system to move. And this is a deepening low pressure center that's sending very high winds. Some of these estimated winds over 100 miles an hour in some of the mountain ranges. But further south, we've got that area of instability and that atmospheric river of just funneling moisture across into Southern California. They've already seen devastating flooding. And the concern is with more additional flooding as we go into later on today. So I appreciate all my subscribers out there. This channel is up to 238,000 subscribers. I would love to reach 250,000 by March, and you can help me get there. If you are new here, hit the subscribe button. I put out a lot of content on a daily basis to keep you well ahead of the storm. So here's the setup for as far as the power outages. Yeah, so with those numerous high wind gusts, at one point last night, we were almost close to 1 million customers in California that did not have electricity. And even this morning, we're still right around the 500,000 mark, and this will fluctuate throughout the day. But yes, very intense winds are still compounding the effect with this area of low pressure center that's highlighted across Northern California. That is just sending these bands of waves of precipitation and very high winds, just inundating a lot of the same areas. And this is a flood warning they put out into the overnight hours. And yes, this is a completely dangerous situation. They almost upgraded this to a flood emergency, but this is one step lower. But yeah, they've seen anywhere from 5 to 9 inches of rain. So yeah, it's been a couple of hours. So they're still raining, it's still adding, but we're talking about life-threatening flash flooding is ongoing throughout the morning hour, and this is a particular dangerous situation. So yes, this is obviously the ground is completely saturated and they can't handle it anymore. And here's some estimated wind gusts that were clocked as this area of low pressure really deepened last night. These are some of the mountain passes, upwards to 138 miles an hour. All of these are obviously over hurricane force winds. But even into the Bay Area, they've seen over 100-mile-per-hour wind gusts and numerous reports of 60, 70, 80, 90 miles an hour, really throughout the entire state of California. And here's the concern with that banding of precipitation, just really not moving anywhere. Yet we have back-to-back high risk for excessive flooding. So a lot of these areas have already seen six inches, upwards to almost 12 inches of rainfall. And yet we have additional precipitation in and around the Los Angeles region, into Santa Ana, back into Long Beach, up here towards Riverside. And this will shift even a little bit further south, getting into Oceanside. But so this is kind of the bullseye later on this afternoon, is just this feeder banding. So, I mean, here's the setup. We've got this dome, this blocking ridge of high pressure. It's kind of like more of a omega block. And here's that first atmospheric river, the leftover effect for what was made landfall in California just a couple of days ago. Now that instability is pushing off into the southeast, so they're still dealing with some severe storms down here. In fact, they've had a couple confirmed tornadoes in and around Georgia into Florida just yesterday, and they've got concerns into today. The ridge is over the top, so you got that blocking mechanism, you got the dry slot in the middle, but all the instability is really out here. So with this area of low pressure center just more or less kind of stalled and not really moving very fast, it doesn't seem to let up. And that's the concern later on today. And that's why they did in fact go ahead and extend the high risk for excessive flooding. So this is compounding of what you've already seen. And this is the concern with the newest data that's coming out. Some of the high resolution guidances again, another 3, 4, if not almost 5 inches in and around the Los Angeles region, into Riverside, down to Oceanside. San Diego really hasn't had technically that much. They will be getting a little bit into the action. That's the concern with these, it's narrow banding. It's typically they're around 250, maybe 500 miles wide. But if you're in that banding, that training banding of rain, that is where you're going to see the copious amounts of rainfall, and where you're going to see the likelihood of some of these areas of double digits. And yes, I'm not surprised if some of these areas end up picking up, 15, if not upwards to even more inches of rain in some of these mountain passes. So devastating flooding is definitely a huge concern. And there's the surge. I mean, that is an atmospheric river all day long. So you got precipitation at 300, 400, 500% above average, what you would typically see this time of year. And you're just one of your wetter months. So this is on top of what you typically see. And yes, even more additional rain, flooding rains at some point. Some of these areas are an inch of rain per hour. And yes, definitely concern for more flash flooding as we move forward through today. But it even actually extends into tomorrow. It does let up, I guess, somewhat. You won't have nearly the intensity, but you're still getting, heavy rain. So there's the first system that will be moving off the coast to the southeast. Notice the dry slot. Notice much of the country is more or less on the dry side. California and the West Coast is really taking up all the energy out of the atmosphere and pummeling in the state of California, going through Nevada, and eventually this will start creeping into those areas across into Arizona on Tuesday afternoon. Into Wednesday, it'll start to let up even more for California. Still get some isolated and scattered rain, but now the piece of energy is now shifting and moving more into Arizona, getting into New Mexico, back into Utah, and back into Colorado here, with some of the heavier snows into the mountain regions. And if we extend it and kind of move forward, you can see this subtle hint of, looking at the 500 millibar by the time we head into that, Thursday into Friday morning time frame. We've been talking about kind of Alaska's been, deepening brutal cold, and that changes this week. So they're looking at a rapid warm up. We'll finally start to see some of that colder air start to funnel further south. And as it does, that will start to, as this ridge is able to move and kind of shift further off to the east, then that low pressure center will definitely lose its luster, and this trough will more or less get elongated. So as it moves inland, it'll lose a lot of its intensity with it. It'll still have precipitation, but you lose a lot of the intense precipitation that you've had across the West Coast, and that will be moving inland. And notice this little subtle boundary here of colder air. That is some colder air that will start to sneak into the Dakotas and into Minnesota as we head into that Friday, Saturday time frame. And what will that allow to do? And as that trough kind of moves over, so now these areas that have been in a dry slot will be getting into the action as things start to change. I more or less call this transition week. So we've got the blocking set up at the front half of the week. In the middle half, the atmosphere is be able to transition from a colder setup west and funneling in, moving that some of that colder anomalies across into the central and eventually in our eastern 2/3 of the U.S. And that's going to bring some snow along with it. So by the time we head into that Thursday, Friday time frame, we should have some pretty good snows across Wyoming through the Dakotas, as an area of low pressure, pretty strong still, 989 millibar back into Iowa and getting into Minnesota, heading into Thursday afternoon. And there's your Saturday setup. That, again, this is kind of a slow process. This colder air will start building across the west and slowly start to shift. You're still got the ridge of high pressure locked over most of Texas, most of the southeast, and most of the northeast, as we head into your Saturday time frame. But that is going to change as we head into the weekend, because the Jetstream will finally be able to kind of move, right? So it's kind of like locked in place right now. But by the time we head into Saturday and some of this colder air with this Jetstream buckling, that'll allow this colder air to dip a little bit further south, but it'll also allow this Jetstream to kind of buckle. So instead of a west to east trajectory, now it's more of a kind of a southwest and northeast trajectory. So as these areas of low pressure, as these instabilities push further south, that'll put the colder air further south, and that'll put any potential snow further south as well. So we are seeing a transition. That's why I always like to refer this kind of as transition week, before I think much of the US is actually cold as we head into next week. So, but right now, so here's the setup for Saturday. So we got the instability that's coming off the Rockies. That'll bring some more snow showers into New Mexico and elongate this jet stream. So yes, the areas that have been dry lately will finally get back into the action across the Carolinas and through portions of the mid-Atlantic, while you're still on the colder sector with that little buckle in the jet stream across Minnesota into Wisconsin into the upper Great Lakes with some snow showers. So as the jet stream continues to kind of dip, as we head into that Sunday, Monday time frame, again, that'll set up a low pressure a little bit further south, and that will drag in the colder air and the overall instability further south as well. So here's some of the probability guidances of that further south snow that could unfold by the time we head into that Sunday, Monday time frame, as cold air continues to kind of drain down from the northwest. That'll add the instability and potential snow across these areas into New Mexico, into the Texas Panhandle. We'll have to watch this coming forward, but yes, I do feel that portions of Oklahoma will be getting some snow by then, and this won't be until Sunday. So we do have a warm week ahead, but I feel the transition for most areas will start out west, and then by the time we head into the weekend, we'll pull a little bit further south. And if we look at the upper air going into early part of next week, this is next Monday by then, so it originates on the weekend coming in from the northwest. This will dive down through Texas by Monday and eventually start heading into our southern plains section, while much of the ridging starts to build over the top. So once we get this ridging start to build over the top, that will trap the colder air underneath, but that will also be able to deepen the colder air. So yeah, by the time we get into the middle of the month, even the upper air and a lot of the ensemble guidances are already kind of kind of hinting at a major pattern change will be on the way. So we've got that omega block right now, so you can see it looks completely different from just a week from where it is now, from what it's going to be looking like by the time we head into that 10 days from now, as the ridging will be lifting back over to Greenland. It'll be lifting back over to Alaska. That'll trap the colder air underneath, and once this gets trapped, that'll allow it to get intense even further and allow that cold air to actually get even colder as we head towards the middle of the month. So it is transition week. We start off with a big time atmospheric river event across the West Coast, and then we kind of transfer some of that energy away from California as that cold air comes in from Alaska out west, and then transitions slowly shifting into our central US and eventually heading in towards the east by the time we get into the middle of the month. So guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video, definitely hit the subscribe button, and catch me next update where I protect you before and after the storm.